In feudal Japan, amidst battles and betrayals, a story of lost honor and unexpected love unfolds. Hiroshi, a dishonored samurai, lives on the fringes of society, trying to forget his blood. He bears a scar on his face, wears worn armor, and always keeps his katana, but his soul is weary of war. Aiko, the daughter of a powerful feudal lord, is a young woman of delicate beauty, fair skin, and long black hair adorned with flowers. Known for her kindness and intelligence, she is sought after as a bargaining chip in political alliances. When Hiroshi is forced to protect Aiko, the daughter of his greatest enemy, his convictions are tested, and a forbidden love blossoms, capable of changing their destinies forever. The setting is Japan in the late Sengoku period, a time of fractured alliances and endless wars between rival clans. Among the countless warriors who served powerful lords, one figure lived in isolation, his name spoken with scorn: Hiroshi, the samurai without honor. Hiroshi had once been a respected retainer of a noble clan. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and disciplined in appearance, with sharp, dark eyes that reflected the burden of his past. A scar stretched down the left side of his face, beginning at the temple and cutting across his cheek, a permanent reminder of the battles he had survived. His armor, once polished and decorated with his clan's crest, now appeared worn, scratched, and patched from years of disuse. Despite the decay of his outward appearance, he still carried himself with the composure of a warrior. His blade, a finely crafted katana, remained his constant companion, always resting at his side. Hiroshi's dishonor was not the result of cowardice or betrayal for personal gain, but rather an act of compassion. Years earlier, during a campaign ordered by his lord, Hiroshi refused to carry out a massacre of villagers. He broke ranks to protect innocent people, women, and children who were defenseless. This act of defiance enraged his master. To the samurai code, obedience was absolute. Hiroshi's decision was judged as treason. Stripped of his titles, cast out by his comrades, and branded a traitor, he wandered without purpose. From that day forward, he was known as the samurai without honor. Now Hiroshi lived far from castles and battlefields. His home was a humble wooden hut near a mountain forest. The hut contained little: a futon rolled neatly in one corner, a low wooden table, a clay pot for rice, and his sword resting on a rack. Each morning he followed a disciplined routine, fetching water from a clear stream, chopping firewood, and practicing kata with his sword beneath the tall pines. The nearby villagers often avoided him, whispering when he passed by their markets. In their eyes, a masterless warrior was dangerous, unpredictable, and cursed by fate. Hiroshi endured their suspicion in silence. Evenings found him seated outside his hut, watching the sun disappear beyond the mountains. In the solitude of twilight, he wondered if his ancestors despised him for defying his lord, or if they understood that he had acted to preserve life. Honor and dishonor, once so clearly defined, had become blurred in his heart. One summer evening, his solitude was interrupted. A messenger arrived on horseback, his robe marked with the crest of the Takeda clan. Lord Takeda was a powerful warlord and, ironically, the sworn enemy of Hiroshi's former master. The messenger bowed reluctantly, knowing well the reputation of the man before him. "Samurai," the messenger said, his tone respectful but cautious. "Lord Takeda commands you to serve as the protector of his daughter, Lady Aiko. She must travel to the capital, and the mountain roads are filled with danger. Bandits seek ransom from noble families. The Lord has chosen you to ensure her safety." Hiroshi studied the man carefully, his hand resting near the hilt of his sword. The irony was bitter. Years ago, Lord Takeda had called for Hiroshi's execution, mocking him as a disgrace to the warrior class. To now be summoned to protect his daughter seemed a cruel twist of fate. Why would Lord Takeda trust his daughter to the care of a man he considers dishonorable? Hiroshi asked, his voice calm but edged with suspicion. The messenger hesitated before replying. Because no other warrior is available. His armies are engaged in campaigns to the north. Though the Lord does not honor your name, he knows of your skill. This is not a gesture of respect, but of necessity. For a moment, Hiroshi considered refusing. He had no desire to serve another lord or to involve himself in the struggles of powerful men. Yet the duty of protecting an innocent was not something he could ignore. Deep within him, a faint ember of honor still remained. Without further words, he accepted the task. The following day, Hiroshi traveled to the fortress of Lord Takeda. The castle rose atop a hill, its wooden gates reinforced with stone, banners bearing the Takeda crest fluttering in the summer breeze. Inside, the courtyards were filled with armed retainers who cast hostile glances toward the visitor. Whispers followed him as he walked, each soldier recognizing the scarred samurai who had been cast out. It was in this place that Hiroshi first saw Lady Aiko. She appeared in the courtyard, walking with the measured elegance taught to women of noble blood. She was young, perhaps 20 years of age, with delicate features and long black hair tied neatly with silk ribbons. Her pale complexion reflected her sheltered life, and yet her dark eyes held determination and intelligence beyond her years. She wore a blue kimono embroidered with white cranes, a symbol of purity and longevity. When her gaze met Hiroshi's, her expression hardened. She looked upon him with disdain. So this is the man chosen to guard me? The samurai without honor? Her voice carried across the courtyard, sharp and unrestrained. Hiroshi bowed his head slightly, unshaken by her words. I may have lost my master, but I have not lost my skill. I will protect you, Lady Aiko, even at the cost of my life. Aiko turned away without answering, her disdain clear. To her, he was little more than a disgraced warrior, a man unworthy of trust. She had grown up hearing stories of his betrayal, tales passed down in the halls of her father's castle. Yet her father's order was absolute. She had no choice but to accept his presence. The next morning, Hiroshi and Aiko set out on the mountain road. Aiko rode on horseback, her posture upright and proud, while Hiroshi walked ahead, his sword at his side, eyes scanning the forest with sharp attention. The summer air was filled with the cries of cicadas, and the path twisted through valleys and dense groves of cedar. Hours passed in silence until Hiroshi noticed subtle movement among the trees, shadows that followed too closely, too quietly. He stopped suddenly, raising his hand for Aiko to halt. His voice was steady, commanding. Stay close. From the undergrowth, masked men emerged, armed with short blades and spears. Their eyes were fixed on Aiko. The leader laughed harshly. The daughter of Takeda, guarded by the dishonored samurai? Fortune smiles on us today. We will take her and leave you to die. Aiko's breath caught in her throat, but Hiroshi did not move. Slowly, he drew his sword, the steel reflecting the dappled sunlight filtering through the trees. His stance was calm, his movements precise, the stance of a warrior who had faced death many times before. The bandits advanced, confident in their numbers. Yet Hiroshi's gaze did not falter. Between the forest shadows and the terrified noblewoman, the dishonored samurai stood firm, ready to defend the daughter of his enemy. The clash was inevitable, and thus ended the first chapter with the scarred warrior facing danger once more, his honor to be tested not by lords or armies, but by the choice to protect a life that hated him. The silence of the forest was broken by the rustle of leaves and the crunch of footsteps as the bandits stepped from the undergrowth. Hiroshi, the dishonored samurai, stood between them and Lady Aiko. His dark eyes, sharp and unwavering, reflected no fear. His tall frame, scar-marked and battle-hardened, was positioned in perfect balance. His katana gleamed in the scattered rays of sunlight, held in a stance of readiness. Lady Aiko, still seated upon her horse, clutched the reins tightly. Her youthful face, framed by strands of long black hair, revealed both fear and pride. Her blue silk kimono embroidered with white cranes seemed fragile against the shadow of danger. Though she despised the man sworn to protect her, she could not deny the aura of calm strength radiating from him at this moment. The bandit leader, a thick-shouldered man with a jagged scar across his forehead, grinned as he approached. "A dishonored warrior guarding a noble woman. This is fate smiling upon us. Hand her over, and perhaps you will live to wander another day." Hiroshi's expression did not change. His scarred face remained still, though his voice carried the weight of iron. "You will not touch her. Turn back now, or this road will be your grave." The bandits laughed, surrounding him in a semicircle. They were armed with short spears, curved blades, and crude bows. Their clothing was mismatched, patched together from stolen garments. They had the look of men who had long abandoned honor for survival. Without hesitation, the first bandit lunged, spear aimed toward Hiroshi's chest. The samurai sidestepped gracefully, his movements precise from years of training. His katana flashed, striking the wooden shaft and breaking it cleanly in two. With a swift turn, Hiroshi's blade stopped just short of the man's throat, forcing him back in panic. Two more rushed forward, blades raised. Hiroshi's scarred face tightened, and he shifted his weight. His katana cut through the air in a controlled arc, striking one weapon aside before his other hand thrust the hilt into the second attacker's chest. Both men staggered, stunned by the speed and discipline of the dishonored warrior. Lady Aiko watched with wide eyes. She had been raised on stories of warriors and their loyalty to her father, Lord Takeda. Yet here before her was a man stripped of rank, a supposed traitor, moving with the grace and skill of a true samurai. The leader snarled and charged with his curved blade. Hiroshi met him head-on, steel clashing in the stillness of the mountain road. Their strikes echoed, sparks flashing as iron struck iron. The bandit leader was strong but wild, relying on brute force. Hiroshi's movements, by contrast, were measured, calm, each strike calculated. With a sudden twist, Hiroshi disarmed him, sending the man's weapon tumbling into the dirt. Breathing heavily, the leader fell back, glaring with rage. The other bandits, realizing the skill of the scarred samurai, hesitated. They looked to one another, their courage faltering. Hiroshi did not press forward, but instead lowered his blade slightly, his voice steady as ever. "This is your last chance. Leave the road, and you may live. Continue, and you will not see another dawn." The silence stretched. Finally, the bandits retreated, dragging their wounded leader with them. The forest slowly returned to its natural rhythm, the chirping of cicadas, the whisper of leaves. Lady Aiko released a breath she had been holding. She looked at Hiroshi, her dark eyes filled with a mix of emotions she struggled to name. For years, she had heard tales of his betrayal, that he was a man without loyalty or honor. Yet she had just witnessed him risk his life without hesitation to protect her. Still, her pride held firm. "Do not think this redeems you," she said coldly. "You acted as any warrior should. But it does not erase your past." Hiroshi sheathed his sword calmly, his expression unreadable. "My past is carved into me like this scar," he said, gesturing toward his face. "It cannot be erased, but my duty now is clear. I will protect you, Lady Aiko, no matter your opinion of me." Their journey continued along the mountain road. The sun sank lower, casting golden light across the valleys. Hiroshi walked ahead, scanning every shadow, while Aiko followed on horseback, her thoughts restless. She had been raised to despise this man, to see him as a symbol of disgrace. Yet the memory of his blade moving with precision, the calm in his voice as he faced death, lingered within her. As night approached, Hiroshi led them to a small clearing where a stream flowed gently. He gathered firewood with practiced efficiency while Aiko sat nearby, maintaining her noble posture even in the wilderness. The fire crackled, casting flickering light upon their faces. Aiko finally broke the silence. "Tell me, why did you lose your honor? What crime was so great that your name is spoken with shame even in my father's halls?" Hiroshi's gaze remained fixed on the flames. His voice was low, steady. "I refused an order that would have slaughtered innocents. In the eyes of my lord, I was a traitor. In my own heart, I could not raise my sword against those who could not fight back. That is my crime." Aiko studied him carefully. His scar, his weary eyes, his calm presence, all were marks of a man shaped by battle and exile. For the first time, doubt crept into her certainty. Could it be that the dishonored samurai was not the villain she had been taught to believe? The firelight danced across their faces as silence settled once more. Hiroshi sat upright, his sword always within reach, embodying the discipline of a warrior despite his exile. Aiko, wrapped in her fine kimono, appeared delicate yet strong, her pride unbroken even in uncertainty. The night deepened, the forest alive with distant sounds of owls and rustling leaves. As Aiko closed her eyes to rest, Hiroshi remained awake, his scarred face illuminated by the fire, his dark eyes scanning the shadows. He knew more dangers awaited on the road ahead. And though Aiko's heart remained cold toward him, the bond of protector and protected had begun to take shape, fragile, uncertain, but undeniable. Thus ended the second chapter, with the dishonored warrior keeping silent watch, the daughter of his enemy beside him, and the shadow of fate pressing ever closer upon their path. Dawn crept slowly across the mountains, painting the sky with pale shades of gold and rose. The forest stirred as birds sang, and the mist that clung to the valley began to lift. Hiroshi, the dishonored samurai, was already awake. His tall frame stood like a statue near the stream, the scar that ran across his weathered face catching the first rays of sunlight. His katana rested in his hand, though unsheathed only enough to reflect the morning light. He had not closed his eyes during the night, choosing instead to remain vigilant while Lady Aiko slept. Lady Aiko stirred from her rest, her long black hair tumbling over her shoulders as she sat upright. Her delicate features, so carefully preserved by a life of nobility, were softened in the morning light. She adjusted her blue silk kimono embroidered with white cranes, determined to maintain her dignity even in the wilderness. Her dark eyes, filled with pride and suspicion, shifted to the scarred warrior who stood guard. "You did not sleep," she said quietly, though her tone remained firm. Hiroshi's gaze did not move from the trees. His voice was calm, steady as always. A protector does not rest when danger walks the same road. Bandits are like wolves. They retreat when beaten, but they may follow in silence, waiting for another chance. Aiko looked at him for a moment longer, then turned her face away. Though she would not admit it aloud, there was a strange comfort in knowing that his vigilance never wavered. By mid-morning, they resumed their journey. Hiroshi walked on foot, every movement disciplined and purposeful, while Lady Aiko rode her horse with the posture of one born to command. The mountain road twisted and descended into a valley where smoke curled faintly into the sky. Soon they reached a small village nestled beneath tall pines, its wooden houses clustered near a clear stream. The villagers paused in their tasks as the unlikely pair approached. Farmers carrying bundles of rice stalks, children chasing one another through the dirt paths, and women hanging clothes on bamboo poles. All turned their eyes to the scarred samurai and the noblewoman in her fine kimono. Whispers spread quickly. "Is that not Hiroshi, the traitor?" One man muttered under his breath. "The Ronin with the scarred face?" Aiko noticed the way they looked at him, some with fear, others with contempt. Her heart tightened, though her prideful nature prevented her from speaking in his defense. Instead, she held her head high, ignoring their stares. Hiroshi, for his part, showed no reaction. His scarred face remained unreadable, his dark eyes calm. He had grown used to such looks. The weight of dishonor followed him like a shadow, and no village could forget the tale of his disgrace. At the edge of the village, an elderly man approached. His back was bent with age, but his eyes were sharp. "What brings you here, Hiroshi?" he asked, his tone filled with suspicion. Hiroshi bowed slightly, his voice even. "We seek only food and water before continuing our journey." The old man's gaze shifted to Lady Aiko, her silk kimono shimmering in the sunlight, her noble bearing unmistakable. Whispers grew louder among the villagers. A noblewoman in the company of a disgraced samurai was a sight that stirred both curiosity and unease. Aiko finally spoke, her voice commanding yet measured. "I am Lady Aiko, daughter of Lord Takeda. This man is my protector on the road. We ask for your aid, and you will be remembered with gratitude." The villagers lowered their heads at the mention of her father's name. Lord Takeda was a powerful daimyo, known for his influence across the region. Though Hiroshi was scorned, the presence of Takeda's daughter silenced further protest. The elder finally nodded. "Very well. Rest here, my lady. You shall have what you need." They were offered a place near the stream to sit and rest. Rice, vegetables, and fresh water were brought to them. Aiko ate with refined manners, while Hiroshi remained watchful, eating little and keeping his katana within reach. Children gathered at a distance, whispering and pointing at the scarred warrior. One boy, braver than the rest, stepped closer. "Is it true you once fought 10 men alone?" he asked with wide eyes. Hiroshi looked at him, his expression calm. "It is true I have faced many battles, but a warrior does not count the number of men he fights. He remembers only those he failed to protect." The boy's eyes widened at the somber words, and he retreated, leaving Hiroshi once again in silence. Aiko observed all of this with a conflicted heart. She saw the villagers' fear, the children's curiosity, the scarred man's calm dignity, despite the weight of dishonor. The contradiction unsettled her. Could this really be the man her father called a traitor? Later that afternoon, as they prepared to leave, the elder approached once more. His voice was low, urgent. "The road ahead is dangerous. Bandits gather in the forests beyond. Some say they are led by a former retainer of your father, now turned against him. If you travel, you must be cautious." Hiroshi inclined his head respectfully. "We will proceed with care. Your warning is received with gratitude." Lady Aiko mounted her horse once more, her noble posture unshaken. Hiroshi walked ahead, his tall figure steady, his scarred face set with quiet resolve. As they departed the village, the whispers of the people followed them, blending with the rustle of the pines. The path stretched onward, winding deeper into the forest. Aiko's thoughts were restless. She had seen again the contradictions within her protector, the dishonored warrior who commanded respect through action rather than reputation. His scarred face and calm eyes lingered in her mind. Night was approaching when Hiroshi spoke at last, his voice low but certain. The elder's words were true. Danger lies ahead. Stay close, Lady Aiko. The shadows on this road grow longer with each step. Thus, the third chapter ended with the noblewoman and her dishonored guardian pressing deeper into uncertain lands, their bond unspoken but slowly, inevitably taking root. The forest was vast and silent as Hiroshi led the way along the narrow path. The towering pines blocked most of the fading sunlight, and the air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and moss. Hiroshi's tall, lean figure moved with the discipline of a warrior who trusted neither the road nor the silence around him. His scar, carved across his face from temple to jaw, caught the dim light as he turned his head to scan the shadows. His calm, unreadable eyes never ceased their watch. Lady Aiko followed on horseback, her noble posture unbending despite the unease that crept into her heart. She was dressed, as always, in her silk kimono of deep blue embroidered with white cranes. Her long black hair framed her delicate features, her dark eyes sharp and proud, betraying only a trace of unease. Though she was far from her father's fortress, she carried herself as though she still stood within its walls, unwilling to surrender her dignity even in exile. "Why do you walk when you could ride?" she asked, her voice breaking the silence. Hiroshi did not turn. His voice was steady as always. A warrior's feet must touch the earth, to hear its voice, to feel when danger approaches. Aiko frowned slightly. "Do you truly sense danger beneath every tree?" "There is danger everywhere," he replied without hesitation. "The world does not forgive carelessness." She did not answer, but his words lingered in her mind. As the path descended into a ravine, Hiroshi raised his hand sharply, signaling for her to halt. His eyes narrowed as he studied the broken branches and disturbed soil ahead. The silence was no longer the stillness of nature, but the quiet tension of something unseen. "Bandits," he murmured. Before Aiko could react, figures emerged from the trees. Rough men, dressed in torn garments, armed with spears, short swords, and bows. Their faces bore the hunger and desperation of those who had abandoned honor for survival. At their center stood a man taller than the rest, with a long scar across his arm and a sneer on his lips. "Well, if it isn't Hiroshi, the fallen dog!" the man spat. Once a samurai, now nothing more than a vagabond with a noblewoman at his side. "Tell me, does Lord Takeda know his daughter rides with a traitor?" Lady Aiko's eyes widened, though she held her head high. The insult to her protector stirred something unexpected within her, though she remained silent. Hiroshi's expression did not change. His hand rested calmly on the hilt of his katana. "Step aside," he said. His voice carried no anger, only the certainty of command. The bandit leader laughed. "And why should we? The roads belong to us now. She is worth more than gold, and you, scarred and shamed, you are nothing. Kill him, take her." The bandits surged forward. In a single motion, Hiroshi drew his katana. The blade caught what little light remained, gleaming like a shard of moonlight. His stance was precise, his movements controlled by years of discipline. The first bandit fell before he could raise his spear. The second staggered back, clutching his arm as blood darkened the dirt. Aiko watched, her heart pounding. Though she had grown up among warriors, she had never seen battle so closely. Hiroshi moved with both grace and power, each strike efficient, each step measured. His scarred face remained calm, his dark eyes unshaken, as though the fight was nothing more than a storm he had weathered countless times. The bandit leader charged, wielding a rusted blade. Their swords clashed, sparks leaping in the twilight. For a moment, the forest rang with steel. The leader was strong but reckless, driven by rage rather than skill. Hiroshi was patient, his strikes precise, until at last he disarmed the man with a swift movement that sent his sword crashing to the ground. The remaining bandits hesitated, their courage faltering. Their leader, defeated, scrambled back into the shadows of the trees, and the others fled with him. Hiroshi sheathed his katana in a single smooth motion, his face unreadable. The silence of the forest returned, broken only by the distant cries of fleeing men. Lady Aiko dismounted, her hands trembling, though she tried to hide it. She looked at him with a mixture of awe and confusion. "You fought like a man of honor," she said quietly. "And yet they call you traitor. How can both be true?" Hiroshi turned to her, his scar catching the last trace of fading light. His voice was calm, steady as always. "Because truth is not always what men choose to see. Once I failed in my duty, and for that, my name bears the weight of dishonor. The world does not forget even if I do not cease to serve the code." Aiko's dark eyes studied him carefully. She wanted to press further, to demand the story of his disgrace, but something in his calm expression silenced her. Instead, She adjusted her kimono, straightened her posture, and said only, "We should continue. The night grows colder." Hiroshi nodded and resumed his place at the head of the path, walking with the same silent vigilance as before. Yet in Lady Aiko's heart, something had shifted. She had seen his blade defend her life, had seen the calm resolve in his scarred face, and could not reconcile it with the word traitor. As they walked deeper into the forest, the moon rose above the trees, casting silver light over the road. The bond between them, unspoken but undeniable, grew stronger with every step. And in the shadows, unseen by both, a pair of eyes watched their journey, eyes that carried old grudges and the promise of greater trials yet to come. The road wound higher into the mountains, where the forest grew darker and the air thinner. Hiroshi led the way with the same steady pace, his straw sandals pressing against the dirt, his hand always near the hilt of his katana. His tall, lean figure seemed tireless, his scar catching the moonlight whenever he turned his head to study the shadows. His calm, dark eyes scanned every ridge and tree, never resting, never trusting silence. Behind him, Lady Aiko rode her horse with the grace of nobility, her silk kimono of deep blue embroidered with white cranes swaying with the movement of the animal. Despite the long days of travel, her posture remained upright, her delicate features composed. Her long black hair framed her pale face, her proud and intelligent eyes fixed on the path. Though fatigue touched her body, she refused to reveal weakness before the samurai who had saved her life. That night, as they neared a clearing, the faint outline of a shrine appeared in the distance. Its wooden torii gate stood weathered but unbroken, its red paint faded by years of rain. The shrine was dedicated to the mountain spirit, and its lanterns, though old, still held traces of offerings left by villagers long gone. "We rest here," Hiroshi said, his voice steady as ever. Lady Aiko dismounted, her silk sleeves brushing against the cool evening air. She looked at the shrine with curiosity. "Do you still pray, Hiroshi, even after the world cast you aside?" His eyes lingered on the shrine before he answered. "A warrior's dishonor is his own. The spirits of the land do not judge as men do. Respect must be shown even by one who has fallen." They approached the wooden steps. Hiroshi bowed deeply before the shrine, his scarred face lowered in reverence before lighting a small candle from the fire he carried. Lady Aiko, though raised among temples and rituals, watched him with new attention. His gestures were precise, almost ritualistic, reflecting the discipline of a man who clung to the code of Bushido despite his exile. She knelt beside him, placing her hands together in prayer. The silence of the mountain wrapped around them, broken only by the whisper of the wind. When they finished, she turned to him. "You speak often of dishonor, but tonight I saw only honor. Why must you still bear the weight of shame?" For the first time, Hiroshi's eyes softened. The scar across his face seemed harsher under the lantern light, but his gaze revealed something deeper. "Because once, Lady Aiko, I failed, and a samurai who fails cannot erase his shame. My blade protected no one that day. My lord fell, and with him my name." Aiko listened intently, her proud eyes narrowing with thought. She had heard rumors of Hiroshi's disgrace, whispered tales of betrayal, but the calm truth in his voice struck her more deeply than any story. "Yet you protect me now," she said quietly. "Is this not redemption?" Hiroshi shook his head. "Redemption is not so easily won. Perhaps in protecting you I honor the memory of what I once was, but the stain remains." The fire between them flickered, casting long shadows against the shrine's walls. The moment held a quiet weight neither wished to break. At dawn, the stillness of the shrine was shattered by the distant sound of hooves. Hiroshi's calm eyes sharpened. He rose, his hand tightening on his katana. Aiko followed his gaze, her breath quickening. From the ridge above, riders descended, armed men bearing the crest of Lord Takeda. Their armor glinted faintly in the pale morning light, their leader carrying a long spear with the authority of command. Lady Aiko recognized the crest immediately. "My father's men," she whispered. Relief touched her voice, yet doubt quickly followed. The leader dismounted, his sharp eyes falling on Hiroshi with disdain. "So it is true. The dishonored dog travels with our lord's daughter." Aiko stepped forward, her blue silk sleeves swaying. "This man saved my life from bandits. Without him, I would not stand before you now." The commander's expression did not soften. A traitor's blade cannot cleanse itself with noble deeds. Lord Takeda must decide his fate. Hiroshi stood silent, his scarred face unreadable. His dark eyes met Aiko's for the briefest moment, calm yet unspoken with meaning. Aiko's heart tightened. She wanted to speak, to defend him further, but the weight of duty and the authority of her father's soldiers left her powerless. The commander raised his hand. "You will both ride with us. Lady Aiko, your father awaits, and you, Hiroshi, your fate will be decided at the fortress." The soldiers surrounded them. Hiroshi did not resist, his movements calm, his honor bound to accept what awaited. Lady Aiko mounted her horse, her proud posture unbroken, but inside her heart burned with conflict. She could not reconcile the man who had saved her with the dishonor that followed him. As the riders carried them down the mountain path, the shrine disappeared into the mist. The mountain spirit, silent witness to their prayers, remained behind as Hiroshi and Lady Aiko rode toward a destiny neither yet fully understood. The journey to Lord Takeda's fortress took 2 days. The soldiers marched with strict discipline, their armor clattering in rhythm with each step. Hiroshi walked among them, his tall and lean figure bound by rope at the wrists. Yet even as a prisoner, he carried himself with quiet dignity. The scar across his face caught the light of the sun as he walked, his calm, dark eyes betraying neither fear nor defiance. Lady Aiko rode on horseback, her silk kimono of deep blue embroidered with white cranes flowing gently with the wind. Her long black hair framed her delicate yet strong features, and her proud, intelligent eyes watched every detail. Though she had returned under her father's protection, she could not ignore the tension that twisted within her heart. She had seen Hiroshi's honor with her own eyes, and now he was treated as little more than a criminal. At last, the fortress of Lord Takeda appeared on the horizon. Its high stone walls rose above the surrounding village, the watchtowers gleaming with banners bearing the clan's crest. Inside, courtyards bustled with armored retainers, archers at practice, and servants carrying supplies. The sight was both familiar and imposing to Lady Aiko, who had grown up within these walls. For Hiroshi, however, it was a return not to comfort, but to judgment. They were led into the great hall. Tatami mats covered the floor, and the scent of incense lingered in the air. At the far end, seated upon a raised platform, was Lord Takeda himself. He wore layered armor, polished and adorned with the crest of his clan. His stern face was lined with age, his graying beard adding weight to his authority. His deep eyes, sharp and unyielding, fell immediately on Hiroshi. "Bring him forward," Lord Takeda commanded, his voice echoing across the hall. The guards pushed Hiroshi to his knees before their lord. Still bound, the dishonored samurai bowed deeply, his forehead nearly touching the mat. His movements, even in captivity, carried the precision of a warrior. "My daughter has returned," Lord Takeda said, his gaze shifting to Aiko. "For that, I am grateful. But I would know how it came to be that she traveled in the company of a man such as you." Lady Aiko stepped forward, her sleeves swaying with elegance. Her voice was steady yet filled with conviction. "Father, Hiroshi saved me. Bandits attacked on the road, and without his blade I would have been taken or slain. He has protected me with loyalty and discipline. Whatever his past may be, I owe him my life." A murmur spread among the retainers, for many had known of Hiroshi's disgrace. Lord Takeda raised his hand for silence. His eyes remained fixed on the man kneeling before him. "Hiroshi," the daimyo spoke, his tone heavy with judgment, "I once knew you as a samurai of skill and discipline, but you stand before me as one who carries dishonor. Tell me, why should I not cast you aside as a stain upon my clan?" Hiroshi raised his head slightly, his calm, dark eyes meeting his lord's without arrogance. His scarred face revealed no fear, only truth. "My lord, I failed you once, and for that failure I accepted my exile. The shame I carry cannot be erased. Yet when I saw your daughter in peril, I could not turn away. My blade is no longer worthy of a lord, but it can still protect. If death is your judgment, I will not resist. But let it be known that I have acted with loyalty, even in disgrace." The hall grew silent. Even the guards lowered their eyes, moved by the strength of his words. Lady Aiko's proud gaze softened with emotion, though she dared not interrupt further. Lord Takeda studied Hiroshi for a long moment. His stern face betrayed no emotion, yet in his deep eyes a shadow of respect flickered. "You speak as a man who accepts his fate. That is the way of the warrior. Yet honor is not restored with words." He turned to his daughter. "Aiko, your life is precious to me. You speak for this man, and for that reason alone I will not take his head this day. But understand, his presence here is a reminder of failure. He may remain within the fortress for now, but he will live as an outcast under my watch. Should he falter again, no plea will save him." Lady Aiko bowed, her silk sleeves brushing the mat. "I understand, father." Hiroshi lowered his head once more, accepting the verdict. Though his honor remained broken, he felt a quiet strength in knowing that his path had not ended that day. That night, as the fortress settled into silence, Hiroshi was given a small chamber near the soldiers' quarters. It was sparse, with nothing but a mat and a single lantern, yet it was shelter. Lady Aiko, returning to her own chambers, found herself restless. She could not ignore the memory of Hiroshi kneeling with dignity before her father, his scarred face illuminated by resolve. In the courtyard below, Hiroshi sat alone, his tall figure outlined by moonlight. His calm eyes looked toward the sky as if seeking answers from the heavens. The dishonored samurai remained bound by shame, yet in that moment, Lady Aiko felt that perhaps his path was not one of disgrace, but of a different kind of honor, one her father had yet to see. The fortress of Lord Takeda stirred with activity each dawn. The clash of wooden practice swords echoed in the training yard, servants hurried with food and water, and armored guards patrolled the walls. Among them now moved Hiroshi, once a samurai, now an outcast under the strict watch of his former lord. His tall and lean figure carried an unshakable discipline even as his status was reduced. His scarred face remained impassive, his calm, dark eyes betraying no bitterness. Though bound by dishonor, his every movement, precise, controlled, deliberate, still carried the mark of a warrior. His quarters were a small chamber near the barracks, with only a thin mat and a lantern. Each morning he rose before the others, kneeling in silence to sharpen the blade that had once served his lord. Though he was stripped of rank, he was not forbidden a weapon, for Lord Takeda's judgment had allowed him life, not freedom. The soldiers watched him with suspicion. Some whispered of his disgrace, others mocked quietly, yet none could deny the aura of quiet strength that clung to him. Lady Aiko, daughter of Lord Takeda, resumed her duties within the fortress after her rescue. She was as striking as ever, her long black hair flowing like silk, her proud eyes sharp and intelligent. Her kimonos, adorned with embroidered cranes, reflected her noble birth. Yet behind her composure, she struggled with unrest. Each time she saw Hiroshi walking across the courtyard, his figure tall against the stone walls, her heart stirred with conflict. He was dishonored, yet he had saved her life with loyalty unmatched. Lord Takeda himself remained stern and unyielding. His face, weathered and lined with years of command, carried the authority of a daimyo. His graying beard and piercing gaze gave him an aura of immovable strength. Within the great hall, he spoke little of Hiroshi, save to remind his retainers that the man was not to be trusted beyond the limits of his word. His commands were law, and none dared oppose them. The days passed with Hiroshi living at the edge of the fortress society. He was given tasks fit for one beneath the station of a samurai, repairing armor, carrying supplies, assisting the lower-ranked guards with drills. Yet he completed each task with the same discipline he once gave to battle. His tall, lean form bent to labor without complaint, his scarred face reflecting endurance. Many of the younger soldiers, at first scornful, began to watch him with a mix of respect and unease. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Hiroshi stood alone in the training yard. The others had left, yet he remained, practicing with his blade in silence. Each strike was measured, each step precise. His calm, dark eyes focused on nothing but the discipline of motion. The sound of his sword cutting the air drew the attention of Lady Aiko, who watched from the shadows of the veranda. She saw not a broken man, but a warrior who carried his shame with dignity. "Why do you continue?" A voice broke the silence. It was Captain Renjiro, one of Lord Takeda's most loyal retainers. His broad frame was clad in armor, his face stern, his tone sharp. "You are no longer a samurai. What purpose is there in clinging to the ways you have lost?" Hiroshi lowered his blade, bowing his head with respect. "Discipline is not lost with rank, Captain. Though my name bears shame, the way of the warrior still guides my breath and step. To abandon it would be to abandon life itself." Renjiro studied him, his frown deepening. Though he held disdain for Hiroshi's dishonor, he could not deny the truth in his words. Without further reply, the captain turned and walked away, leaving Hiroshi once more in silence. That night, Lady Aiko approached Hiroshi in the courtyard. The moonlight reflected off her embroidered kimono, casting her in a glow of quiet grace. She spoke softly, her intelligent eyes fixed on him. "They treat you as less than you are, yet you endure it with strength. My father sees only your failure, but I cannot ignore what I have seen with my own eyes." Hiroshi bowed low, his scar catching the pale light. "My lady, your words honor me, yet I ask nothing in return. My life is yours because you defended it before your father. That debt cannot be repaid." Aiko's proud eyes softened, though her voice remained steady. "I did not speak to repay a debt. I speak because I believe there is more to your path than disgrace. Time may yet reveal it, though my father does not wish to see it now." Their exchange ended as footsteps approached. Guards patrolling the walls passed by, and Aiko withdrew to her chambers. Hiroshi returned to his quarters, yet her words lingered in his calm mind. The following morning, rumors spread through the fortress. Scouts had returned with news. Rival forces moved near the borders, threatening the safety of the villages sworn to Lord Takeda's protection. Preparations began at once, soldiers gathering weapons, captains issuing commands. The fortress was alive with urgency. Hiroshi, though still an outcast, felt the weight of the news. He knew battle was near, and with it, the chance that fate might once more test his blade. He sharpened his sword with steady hands, his calm eyes reflecting both readiness and restraint. From her chamber window, Lady Aiko looked out across the courtyard where Hiroshi prepared in silence. Her heart wavered between duty to her father and the unspoken bond she felt for the dishonored samurai. She knew the coming days would place them all at the edge of destiny. And within the great hall, Lord Takeda stood over a map of his lands, his deep, commanding voice laying out strategy. Yet even in his unwavering resolve, a shadow of doubt crossed his stern face. For though he had cast Hiroshi aside, he could not deny that in the time of war, even a man of disgrace might yet prove his worth. The morning air over Lord Takeda's fortress was heavy with tension. From the high walls, banners embroidered with the crest of the Takeda clan fluttered in the wind, signaling the readiness of war. Inside the stone gates, soldiers gathered in disciplined rows, their armor polished, their yari spears and bows lined with precision. The clang of metal echoed as blacksmiths worked without pause, ensuring every blade was sharp, every piece of armor repaired. Hiroshi, tall and lean, his scarred face calm and expressionless, walked among the preparations. Though he was no longer a samurai of rank, he carried himself with the same measured discipline as those who still bore honor. His calm, dark eyes surveyed the movement of men and weapons with silent focus. Assigned to assist the armorers, he bent to his work without hesitation, tightening the cords of helmets, securing plates of iron to chest armor, his hands steady and skilled. Lady Aiko, her long black hair flowing elegantly and her noble kimono embroidered with cranes, moved with quiet dignity across the courtyard. Though her station as the daimyo's daughter kept her from the battlefield, she oversaw the servants who prepared supplies for the coming campaign. Her proud and intelligent eyes studied every detail: bags of rice loaded onto carts, flasks of water tied with rope, bundles of arrows stacked neatly. When her gaze fell on Hiroshi, bent in labor among the lower retainers, her heart stirred with conflict. She saw a warrior where others saw only disgrace. Lord Takeda stood above them all, his commanding figure framed by the veranda of the great hall. His stern face, lined with age and experience, bore the weight of command. His graying beard framed lips that rarely softened, and his piercing gaze measured every soldier in silence before he spoke. "The enemy has moved beyond the border. Our villages cry for protection. We march at dawn." His voice carried over the courtyard, steady and unyielding. Every man bowed in respect, their loyalty unquestioning. Captain Renjiro, broad-shouldered and clad in polished armor, stepped forward. His stern tone echoed across the yard. "Prepare the horses, strengthen the supply lines, and double the patrols. None shall falter before Lord Takeda's banner." His commands were carried out without delay, for Renjiro was respected as a man of both discipline and battlefield experience. Yet beneath the surface of order, doubts stirred. Whispers traveled among the soldiers. Could Hiroshi, the dishonored samurai, be trusted on campaign? Though his disgrace was well known, others could not ignore the aura of resilience that surrounded him. He trained alone when others rested, his tall form moving with precision as his blade cut through the air in silence. Some believed he sought redemption, while others feared betrayal. That evening, as the fortress prepared for departure, Hiroshi sat alone in his small chamber, sharpening his blade under the dim glow of a lantern. The scar across his face caught the flickering light, but his calm eyes remained steady. Discipline bound him. Though stripped of title, the warrior's path was still his guide. He whispered quietly to himself, reciting verses of Bushido that had carried him through years of service. To abandon them, he believed, was to abandon his very soul. A knock at his door broke the silence. Lady Aiko entered, her embroidered kimono trailing softly along the floor. She carried herself with grace, her proud gaze softened only slightly in his presence. "Tomorrow you march," she said quietly. "Though my father has not restored your honor, he allows you to bear a sword in his company. That alone means he has not fully cast you aside." Hiroshi bowed low, his voice steady. "My lady, I ask for nothing but the chance to serve, even in silence. If battle takes me, let it be known that I fell with the name of Takeda upon my lips." Aiko's eyes lingered on him, her noble composure unbroken, though her heart wavered. "Do not fall," she replied at last, "for I believe your path is not yet finished." With that she turned and left him in solitude. At dawn, the fortress came alive with the thunder of hooves and the clatter of armor. Soldiers mounted their horses, banners were lifted high, and drums beat to signal the march. Lord Takeda rode at the front, his stern presence casting authority over all. Beside him, Captain Renjiro held his place as second in command, his broad frame commanding loyalty. Hiroshi rode among the rear guard, his position a reminder of his dishonor. Yet his posture was straight, his grip on the reins firm, his calm, dark eyes forward. The road stretched long, passing rice fields and mountain paths, the air thick with the knowledge that blood would soon be spilled. Villagers bowed low as the procession passed, their voices crying blessings to Lord Takeda and his men. By midday, the scouts returned with urgency. The rival forces had been sighted in the valley ahead, their numbers strong, their banners carried high. Lord Takeda halted his men and studied the terrain, his piercing gaze sweeping across the hills and rivers. With measured tone, he laid out the strategy. "We will hold the high ground. Archers will strike first. The infantry will press forward, and the cavalry will break their lines. Renjiro, take command of the left flank." The soldiers moved with precision, their armor glinting under the sun. Hiroshi's place was among the infantry, his blade resting at his side. His scarred face betrayed no fear, his calm eyes fixed on the horizon. This was the moment where dishonor would be tested against loyalty. As the enemy banners drew closer, the drums of war thundered. Bows were raised, swords drawn, and spears leveled. Lady Aiko, far behind the lines in the safety of the supply train, clasped her hands in silent prayer, her proud gaze fixed on the smoke rising from the battlefield. Hiroshi tightened his grip on his sword. His tall, lean figure stood firm among the ranks, the scar across his face a mark not of shame, but of endurance. The first arrows soared through the air, and with them, the battle began. And as steel clashed and cries rang across the valley, Hiroshi felt within him the weight of destiny. Dishonor had chained him, but in the fire of war, fate would decide if he remained an outcast, or if he would rise once more as a warrior of worth. The valley thundered with the sound of battle. Arrows darkened the sky as Takeda archers released volleys from the high ground, their bowstrings snapping in unison. Shields and armor clattered below as the rival force advanced, their banners rippling defiantly. The clash of steel rang out as infantry lines collided, echoing across the mountains. Among the front ranks stood Hiroshi, his tall, lean frame steady despite the chaos that surrounded him. The scar upon his face caught the glint of sunlight, yet his calm, dark eyes betrayed no fear. With disciplined precision, he wielded his blade, parrying strikes and pressing forward, his movements fluid and measured. Though dishonor had reduced him to a mere foot soldier, his bearing remained that of a true warrior. At the heart of the formation, Captain Renjiro led with commanding strength. His broad frame, encased in polished armor, moved like an unshakable wall through the enemy lines. His stern voice cut through the din of battle as he rallied his men. "Hold the flank. Protect Lord Takeda's banner." Every soldier obeyed without hesitation, for Renjiro's presence inspired confidence even in the darkest moments. On the ridge above, Lord Takeda surveyed the field with his piercing gaze. His stern features, framed by a graying beard, remained unshaken as the tide of war shifted below. His voice carried calmly to the messengers at his side. "The enemy presses hard, but they lack discipline. Push them toward the river crossing. There, their numbers will falter." His commands were sharp, his authority absolute, a leader forged by decades of campaigns. Far from the immediate clash, Lady Aiko remained with the supply train, her noble composure concealing the storm within her heart. Her long black hair framed her proud face as she stood among the servants who prepared water and bandages for the wounded. Though forbidden from the battlefield, Her intelligent eyes followed every plume of smoke that rose from the valley. Her thoughts lingered on Hiroshi, the disgraced samurai who now fought for redemption among common soldiers. The lines surged and wavered. The enemy's infantry pressed hard against the left flank, threatening to break the formation. Seeing this, Captain Renjiro spurred his horse and charged forward, his deep voice commanding order. Yet even with his strength, the left faltered under sheer weight. It was then that Hiroshi saw the danger clearly. With disciplined resolve, he moved without waiting for command. Gathering the scattered men around him, his calm voice cut through the panic. "Hold your ground. Step forward as one." Though many doubted him, his tone carried the unshakable authority of experience. His scarred face, marked by hardship, gave weight to his words. Leading by example, Hiroshi advanced. His tall figure moved deliberately, his blade striking with precision. Inspired, the men steadied their ranks and followed. Together, they reinforced the line, halting the enemy's surge. The clash was brutal, yet Hiroshi's disciplined stance and calm eyes never wavered. From his vantage point, Lord Takeda's piercing gaze fell upon the skirmish. He watched as the dishonored warrior rallied soldiers who would have otherwise fled. For the first time, a flicker of contemplation stirred within his stern features. He spoke quietly to an attendant. "That man fights not for himself, but for the banner. I see no selfishness in his blade." Captain Renjiro, having stabilized another section of the line, turned and caught sight of Hiroshi's actions. Though his stern demeanor rarely softened, respect touched his expression. He saw in Hiroshi the qualities of a true samurai: discipline, calm courage, and loyalty even in disgrace. The battle raged until dusk. The enemy, driven toward the river as Lord Takeda had predicted, broke ranks and retreated. Victory belonged to the Takeda, though it was hard-earned. Smoke drifted across the field, mingling with the cries of the wounded. The clash of steel gave way to the weary silence of survival. As the army regrouped, Hiroshi stood among the battered soldiers, his blade nicked, his armor scarred. His tall frame was weary but unbroken, his calm eyes steady as ever. The scar across his face, once a mark of shame, now seemed to many a symbol of endurance. The men he had rallied spoke in low tones, acknowledging his presence with newfound respect. Lord Takeda rode slowly across the battlefield, his stern face illuminated by the fading light. He halted before Hiroshi, his piercing gaze studying the warrior in silence. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Takeda's voice carried across the quiet ranks. "A man may lose his title, but honor can yet be reclaimed through deed. Today you fought as one who has not abandoned the path." His words, measured and deliberate, carried the weight of acknowledgement. Hiroshi bowed low, his voice steady. "My lord, I claim no redemption. I seek only to serve until the end." Takeda regarded him with calm authority. "Service is the root of honor. Continue as you have, and time will decide the rest." With that, he turned his horse and rode on, leaving Hiroshi standing in silence among the ranks. That night, in the quiet of the camp, Hiroshi sat alone, sharpening his blade by the fire. The scarred lines of his face caught the glow of flame, while his calm eyes reflected steady purpose. For the first time since his fall from grace, he felt not the weight of dishonor, but the faint possibility of restoration. Lady Aiko, in her embroidered kimono, passed among the wounded delivering words of comfort. When her proud gaze met Hiroshi's across the firelight, neither spoke. Yet in that silent exchange, understanding passed between them. Her belief in him had not been misplaced. The men spoke softly of Hiroshi's actions, and though whispers of doubt remained, they were now matched with voices of respect. His journey was far from complete, but the trial of steel had marked a turning point. As the fires of the camp flickered against the night sky, Hiroshi sat unmoving, his tall, lean figure a quiet reminder that honor, once broken, could still be reforged upon the battlefield. Dawn broke over the Takeda encampment, the mists of the valley slowly lifting to reveal a scarred battlefield. Ash still drifted in the air, and the banners of the clan fluttered in the cool morning wind. The victory had been won, but its cost weighed heavily on every man. The cries of the wounded echoed faintly from the healers' tents, a sobering reminder of sacrifice. Among the recovering warriors stood Hiroshi, tall and lean, his armor battered yet carefully repaired. The scar across his face caught the early sunlight, marking him as a man shaped by hardship. His calm, dark eyes showed no boast of victory, only quiet determination. Though dishonor had once reduced him to the ranks of common soldiers, the knight's whispers spoke of his courage, of how he had steadied the left flank when collapse seemed inevitable. At the center of the camp, Lord Takeda emerged from his command tent. His stern figure, framed by a graying beard, carried the authority of a leader who had borne countless campaigns. His piercing gaze swept across the soldiers gathered before him. Behind him, retainers unrolled a scroll, and the air grew hushed. It was the morning assembly where the deeds of the previous day would be judged. Standing nearby, Captain Renjiro observed with disciplined silence. His broad frame, encased in iron-plated armor, bore scratches from the clash, but his composure remained firm. Renjiro's loyalty to the Takeda was unquestionable, and his deep respect for discipline gave his words weight among the men. Not far away, Lady Aiko stood apart, her long black hair cascading over her embroidered kimono. Though women of her station rarely attended such assemblies, her presence was tolerated. Her intelligent eyes fixed upon Hiroshi, her proud bearing unbroken even amidst warriors. She had watched his quiet endurance for years, and now the fate of his redemption rested upon this day. Lord Takeda's voice rose, steady and commanding. Yesterday, we met the enemy at the river valley. Their numbers pressed heavily upon us, yet the line held, and the banner of Takeda did not fall. Victory was earned through discipline and unity. His words echoed across the silent ranks. Then his piercing gaze shifted, settling upon Hiroshi. The murmurs among the soldiers ceased. All eyes turned to the tall, scarred figure standing among them. Takeda's expression was unreadable as he spoke. Among those who fought, one man, though dishonored, rallied broken ranks and restored order where collapse threatened. His actions preserved the flank and gave strength to our cause. The silence deepened. Hiroshi bowed deeply, his calm eyes fixed upon the ground. His voice was steady, humble. My lord, I did only what duty demanded. I seek no reward. Takeda studied him for a long moment, the weight of command evident in his stern features. A warrior who fights only for himself is hollow, but one who fights for the banner, even when stripped of name and privilege, shows the spirit of true service. At these words, a shift rippled through the soldiers. Respect replaced doubt. Captain Renjiro stepped forward, his broad figure casting a shadow across the assembly. His deep voice carried firmly. My lord, I stood witness to Hiroshi's deeds. He did not falter, nor seek glory. He fought as one who understood the code. Takeda's gaze remained upon Hiroshi. Slowly, with deliberate gravity, he extended his hand. An attendant stepped forward, bearing a blade wrapped in silk. The weapon was unadorned, yet finely forged. Takeda's stern voice cut through the silence. Hiroshi, once cast from honor, today I return to you the right to bear the sword of the samurai. You shall serve again, not as a nameless soldier, but as one restored to the path. Hiroshi's breath caught, though his calm eyes revealed only quiet acceptance. He bowed low, his tall, lean figure bending with solemn respect. My lord, I accept not for myself, but to serve the clan until my last breath. The assembly broke into murmurs, some of astonishment, others of approval. Lady Aiko's proud gaze softened as she watched, her intelligent eyes glimmering with restrained emotion. For years, she had believed that redemption was possible for him, and now her faith was vindicated. That evening, as the fires of the camp glowed against the darkening sky, Hiroshi sat sharpening the restored blade. The scar across his face seemed less a mark of disgrace and more a symbol of resilience. Captain Renjiro approached, his broad shadow cast upon the ground. For the first time, his stern face broke into a faint smile. "You have earned your place, Hiroshi. Do not falter again." Hiroshi bowed his head in respect. "Discipline will guide me. I will not stray from the path." Lady Aiko passed quietly, her embroidered kimono trailing softly in the dust. She paused, her long black hair catching the firelight as her eyes met Hiroshi's. No words were spoken, yet the understanding between them deepened, a silent acknowledgement of trials endured and trust renewed. As night enveloped the camp, Lord Takeda stood upon the ridge, gazing across the quiet valley. His stern features remained etched with the burden of leadership, but for a moment his piercing gaze softened. He had seen countless warriors rise and fall, but rarely one who reclaimed honor through such humility and resolve. Hiroshi, once disgraced, now carried a restored sword. His journey was not yet complete, for the path of the samurai was never without trial, but redemption had been granted. The scarred warrior, tall and calm-eyed, had proven that honor, though broken, could be reforged through loyalty, discipline, and unyielding service. And so the tale closed, not with triumph shouted to the heavens, but with the quiet strength of a man who had found his place once more upon the path of the warrior.